Deputy President Paul Mashatile will oversee the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster. The announcement was made by President Cyril Ramaphosa earlier this week. Part of Mashatile's task is to conduct performance appraisals for the police and ministers in charge. Senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, Willem joins us to chat more about this development. Willem, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. It would appear that this is more than what the former deputy president had in terms of responsibility. What do you at least make on the face of it, of this deployment?
Good afternoon to you, Lulu. Yes, you rightly said that the former vice president, their main task is to be head of government business in Parliament, and they focus on that. So we see that this is an additional task that has been dealt to the Vice President for the first time. And this is at a very critical time because as we can all experience what started to happen today with the uprising and all the things that we anticipate to happen on Monday, that's a lot of pressure on your security cluster. But there's some praise for this deployment because we see that Mr. Mashatile is an experienced politician. He's quite a good established leader. He's been in politics since the early 80s, and he's been a premier for Gauteng, etc., etc. So from a leadership perspective, we acknowledge that he's got the skills to oversee and to manage these clusters. But on the other hand, what is cumbersome is that his lack of experience in the field of safety and security might prove to be a challenge. The challenge that we have on top of that is we see that the Minister of Police also do not have any proven experience or background in policing, and so with the Minister of Defence, just to name two of them. And that proves to be a problem, because now they are actually dependent on advisors to actually advise them on their day-to-day task and also on their policy, etc., etc. And the challenge for that is, if they do listen to this good advice, it is not a problem. But we saw in the past that is not always the case. So we anticipate that the Vice President will also now rely on advisors, and we hope that he will adhere to good advice.
That's if they get good advice, and I say that because the Secretary General of the ANC, Willem, last week during the funeral service of the late MEC of Education of the Free State said, well, we're just political deployments or political appointees. At some point he said, what do I know about transport? We rely on people to advisors, and he even went on to taunt some of those advisors. And so how much is that really, though, costing the country? Because then who has the ear of the president, who has the ear of the minister, and what do we know about the advisors?
Yeah, that is a problem. If you look at other countries, if we look at that as a benchmark, you will see that, for instance, your Minister of Justice is normally someone with a good legal background, a politician with a good legal background, and we see that if you look at the United States, for instance, their Minister or their Secretary of Defense is normally a former very senior general that moved into politics with that proven expertise. And if you now have to go and appoint these people, it puts an additional strain, of course, on the economy to do so. And also, what is very important in this realm is that those people have to have the ear of the leaders. And if they don't have the ear of the leaders and there's conflict between them, then it sort of lays this whole thing lame, and that to the expense of the country. And you cannot afford that in your security cluster, especially in a time like we have today with the crime that is out of control and all the other challenges that we face.
You spoke about or touched on it quite briefly, the issue of the protest on Monday. We are seeing the response of not only the president but the security cluster. Is it safe to assume that the deputy president would have been leading these discussions, especially overseeing not only the justice, crime prevention, but the security cluster in terms of the direction that should be taken?
Yes, I believe that this is a baptism of fire for the Vice President, as he has to oversee the security cluster under which the Newzroom resorts. And your Newzroom is your national intelligence and law enforcement agencies that come together there, and they normally then monitor, but they also have to draft do the planning, and they have to oversee the implementation of situations like this, in conjunction, of course, with your NAJOC that is situated in Pretoria, with your NAJOCs that are also and prof joints that are situated in the provinces. But at the end of the day, it all it's a pyramid system that moves up all the way up to the president, where he then has to take ultimate responsibility for all of that. What we saw with the recent events compared to what happened in July 2021 is that there has been prior warning, there's been prior planning, and we also see that the necessary steps have been taken to put the instruments in place in order to deal effectively with the situation that we're expecting. That's already started, as we could see with the events of this morning. And we hopefully what will happen now is that rule of law will be respected and established. And that can only happen if there are consequences for people who are breaking the law. And that will be the test of what will happen here. If people that are breaking the law are being arrested and taken to court, that will actually establish or re-establish the rule of law in places where it is lacking.
Willem, I do wonder what you make. My colleague Ziyanda Ngobo pointing out a very critical, or saying a very critical statement that as citizens we need to be very vigilant. We are in campaign season, even though many political parties are yet to officially launch theirs, right? But next year is a general election. And so the ANC today is marching in Tshwane against the Democratic Alliance. On Monday there's a planned shutdown, which is shrouded by a sense of fear, a sense of there's going to be violence, there's going to be this, there's so much response to it, and yeah, I do wonder what you make of these two situations.
Yeah, I think the fear and the uncertainty can be taken back to the response or the lack of response in 2021. And that really dented the trust in government and also in the security cluster to maintain law and order. And we see that they had some serious efforts in order to address that situation. We can see that the planning is in place, and the proof will be in the pudding at the end of the day, where these agencies have to maintain the law and order. You know, it is our democratic right to campaign. It's a democratic right to picket and all of these things that are happening. But it needs to be within the auspices of the law, and that is what needs to be maintained at all times. And that will ensure also that the trust of the public in the security forces will be restored.
Willem Els is with the Institute for Security Studies. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.